Christmas Eve used to be my favorite night of the year. Back when my wife was alive, the whole house smelled like cinnamon and ham. Mark would run around in his footy pajamas, shaking every present under the tree, swearing he could tell what was inside just by listening. I can still see his little face lit up by those cheap multicolored lights we strung around the window. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and somehow that was always enough. But that Christmas Eve, I was alone in my quiet little house. No smell of cooking, no wrapping paper, no laughter drifting down the hallway. Just the tick of the old clock on the wall and the hum of the heater. Mark and his wife were having a big party at their place across town. At least, that's what I'd heard from a neighbor. I wouldn't have known otherwise, because my phone had been silent. The hurt of that sat heavy on my chest. I'd called Mark twice the week before, left messages. No call back. I told myself he was busy, that holiday planning got chaotic, that younger people did things differently now. Still, I kept checking my phone like a fool, hoping a last-minute invitation would come. It didn't. Around 7, I was sitting at my kitchen table staring at the little gift I'd wrapped for my grandson Eli. A model truck, the kind you build together. I imagined him opening it without me there, or worse, not opening it at all because I'd never brought it. That thought made my stomach twist. There was this feeling, low and insistent, that wouldn't leave me alone. Call it an old man's intuition, or a father's worry. Something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but I'd learned long ago to listen when that quiet voice inside started whispering. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and picked up the gift. Maybe I'd look pathetic, showing up uninvited like some stray dog, but I couldn't sit there one more minute. I told myself I was just dropping off Eli's present. 10 minutes, I promised. Then I'd come home. The snow was coming down in lazy flakes as I drove through their neighborhood, the rich part of town where all the houses looked like they'd come out of a catalog. Lights framed every window, plastic reindeer guarded front yards, and inflatable snowmen swayed in the cold wind. I drove slower than I needed to, my hands tight on the wheel, my heart beating a little too fast for a simple visit. When I turned onto Mark's street, I saw his house right away. It was lit up like one of those Christmas movies Ely liked. White icicle lights along the roofline, a giant wreath on the door, candles glowing in every window. There were cars packed in the driveway and lining the curb. Shiny foreign things I couldn't afford even back when I was working overtime. I parked down the block and sat for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. Through the big front window, I could see people moving around inside, glasses in their hands, dressed in their holiday best. Laughter floated out every time someone opened the door and stepped out to smoke. But as I watched, I realized something that made that uneasy feeling spike. I didn't see Mark. I saw Lauren, my daughter-in-law, laughing too loudly at something one of her cousins said. Her parents, Gary and Carol, sat near the head of the table, looking like the king and queen of the place. Young professionals in blazers and dresses drifted around them, a picture-perfect holiday scene. But no Mark. I told myself he was probably in the kitchen, or maybe out back grilling something. Still, my heart didn't buy that story. I climbed out of the car, wincing a little at the cold hitting my knees, and walked up the shoveled path to the front door. The sounds of Christmas music and clinking glasses grew louder as I got closer. My breath puffed in white clouds as I stood there clutching the little gift bag. I knocked. Hard enough to be heard over the noise. Then I waited. Nothing. I knocked again, longer this time. I could see movement inside, but no one turned toward the door. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, feeling ridiculous, like a solicitor instead of a man visiting his own son. The sting of it settled under my ribs. This was my family, and yet I was standing on the outside, literally and figuratively, waiting to be noticed. Finally, after what felt like a full minute, the door cracked open a few inches. Lauren slipped out onto the porch, closing it most of the way behind her so the warmth and light stayed inside with everyone else. "Oh," she said, that practiced smile spreading across her face. "I didn't know you were coming." Her eyes said something else. Annoyance, irritation, maybe even a flicker of panic. "I tried calling," I said, lifting the gift. "Thought I'd bring this for Ely. Didn't want him to think his grandpa forgot him on Christmas." "You should have called first," she replied quickly. We're having a grown-up thing tonight. It's really not appropriate." Her gaze kept flicking over her shoulder, like she was afraid someone might see me there. My cheeks burned, but I pushed the feeling down. "I won't stay," I said. "Just let me say hello to the boy, drop this off. Then I'll get out of your hair." She shifted, blocking more of the doorway with her body. "Elie's in the back room with my sister's kids, watching a movie. They're settled. I don't want them all wound up again before bed." The way she spoke to me, like I was some well-meaning idiot who didn't understand children, scraped across old wounds. I swallowed and tried to look past her into the house. All I could see was the edge of the entryway, a sliver of the fancy staircase, and the warm glow of the dining room beyond. "Where's Mark?" I asked. For just a second, the smile slipped. "He's resting," she said. "He wasn't feeling well, so he turned in early. On Christmas Eve. During a party in his own house." Her smile never touched her eyes. That's when I knew something was wrong. Before I could answer, a sound drifted to us from deeper inside. Faint, muffled. It might have been someone dropping something, or maybe a door closing. But my ears, tuned from years in noisy garages to pick up the smallest off-note, caught it. A dull thud. A kind of low, strangled noise. Lauren's posture changed. She straightened up and raised her voice a notch, as if to smother whatever sound I'd heard. "We're in the middle of dinner," she said brightly. "Why don't you just give me the gift? And I'll make sure Illy gets it in the morning. You shouldn't be out in this cold anyway." Something deep in my gut twisted. I thought of the last few months. Of Mark canceling our Sunday breakfasts 3 times in a row. Of him sounding tired and flat on the phone, cutting conversations short, always with a "Lauren needs me," or "we're just heading out." Of the one time I thought I heard her voice in the background, sharp and clipped, and then the line had gone dead. I didn't have proof of anything. Just a growing pile of little moments that didn't add up. I turned slightly, pretending to step back from the doorway, my hand loosening on the gift bag. It slipped from my fingers and dropped to the floor just inside the threshold, the little truck inside clanking against the tile. "Oh, clumsy me," I muttered, bending forward. Before she could stop me, I stepped past her to retrieve it. She had to move aside or risk making a scene. For the first time that night, I was inside my son's house. The smell hit me first: rich food, wine, candles that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. From the entryway, I could see into the dining room. Her family filled the long table, laughing at something Gary had just said. Carol wore a glittering necklace that flashed under the chandelier. Not a single face turned my way. To them I was invisible. But even in that brief glance, something else struck me. Mark's chair at the table, his usual spot at the end, was empty. No plate half finished, no glass, no sign he had ever been there. "Grandpa?" The small voice came from down the hallway, and Eli darted into view, socks sliding on the hardwood. His face lit up when he saw me, and my heart clenched with aching joy. Before he could reach me, Lauren's sister appeared out of nowhere, her manicured hand closing around his arm. "Hey, buddy," she said with a sugary smile. "Remember what we talked about. We don't interrupt the adults, okay?" She glanced at me, that same polite smile, like I was part of the furniture. "You can see Grandpa later." Eli's shoulders drooped, but he nodded. "Yes, Aunt Jenna." He looked at me over his shoulder as she steered him back down the hall. There was a question in his eyes I didn't like. As they disappeared, that other sound came again. This time I heard it clearly. From below, a metal scrape, then a low, pained groan. I froze. "What was that?" I asked, turning toward the sound. The hallway ended at a closed door I hadn't noticed from the porch. Lauren was beside me in an instant. "It's nothing," she said too quickly. "The furnace. This old house makes all kinds of noises." "The house is 5 years old," I said quietly. "Where's Mark?" Her jaw tightened. "I told you. He's not feeling well. He's resting downstairs. He doesn't want to be disturbed. Downstairs." I knew my boy. If he were sick, he'd still drag himself up to say hello to his son on Christmas. He wouldn't be hiding in a basement while strangers toasted in his dining room. A slow, cold anger began to creep into my chest. My hand went to the doorknob. "I'll just pop down and say hi," I said, forcing a chuckle. "He can tell me to get lost himself." Her hand clamped around my arm, stronger than I expected. "You can't go down there," she whispered, all the sugar gone from her voice. We looked at each other. For a heartbeat, everything else faded. I saw it then in her eyes, clear as day. Not concern. Not worry for Mark's health. Fear. Fear of losing control. I let my shoulders sag a little, let my face soften in that way people think old men's faces do when they're confused. "Oh, don't fuss," I said louder, aware of movement in the dining room. "I just want to give my boy a hug, that's all. It's Christmas." She hesitated. If she made a scene, her perfect little party might start asking questions she couldn't answer. I turned the knob before she could find the right lie. The door swung open, and a breath of cool, musty air hit my face. The stairway beyond was dark, the only light a faint sliver at the bottom. The sound came again, clearer now. A chain rattling, then a choked sound that might have been a word. My heart pounded in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to run down those stairs, but I forced my feet to move at a steady pace. Behind me, I felt Lauren's presence like a blade at my back. Step by step, the party faded, laughter and carols growing distant, replaced by the hum of the furnace and the faint drip of something in the shadows. My hand slid along the cold rail as I reached the bottom. I fumbled for the light switch and flipped it. The fluorescent bulb buzzed to life overhead, flickering once before settling. The basement came into view. Bare concrete floor, unfinished walls, a few storage shelves along one side, and my son Mark on the floor. He was slumped against the wall, legs twisted awkwardly, one wrist cuffed to a heavy chain bolted into the concrete. The metal band had rubbed his skin raw. I could see old scabs and fresh redness around it. He wore a stained t-shirt and thin sweatpants, no shoes, his toes curled against the cold. His face was swollen, one eye purpled and half closed. There was dried blood at the corner of his mouth. His hair, always neat before, stuck out in wild clumps like he'd been pulling at it. For a second, my brain refused to accept what I was seeing. My knees went weak. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Mark," I croaked, his head jerked up. When his gaze found me, something broke in his expression. Relief, disbelief, and a kind of desperate hope I'd never seen there before. "Dad." His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. He swallowed, wincing. "Thank God you have to get me out of here." Behind me, at the top of the stairs, I could still hear faint strains of Silent Night playing. My son was chained like a prisoner in his own house while his in-laws drank wine over his head. And in that moment, something inside me, something I didn't know was still there, stood up straight. Mark hadn't always looked like that, chained to a wall like some kind of animal. There was a time when he was just my boy, running around in scuffed sneakers, proud of every little thing he could fix with his own two hands. After my wife died, it was just the two of us. I was in my early 40s then, still working full-time at the garage. I'd come home smelling like oil and metal, hands black no matter how hard I scrubbed. Money was tight, grief sat at the table with us every night, but we made our own routines. I'd fry eggs while he packed his school bag. On Saturdays, we'd tinker with old radios or lawnmowers people left for scrap. He'd hand me tools with serious concentration, trying so hard not to disappoint. I did my best to be both parents. I burned a lot of dinners, forgot picture days, but I never missed Christmas. Not once. No matter how tired I was, we always had a tree, even if it was a little lopsided thing from the discount lot. We'd put on carols and hang the same cheap ornaments year after year. He used to say, "It's not Christmas till Dad swears at the tangled lights." He grew into a good man. Soft-spoken, thoughtful. The kind of kid who'd give up his spot in line if he saw someone older behind him. He wasn't a fighter. If anything, he bent too easily, always trying to keep the peace. That's part of what scares me now, looking back. People like that, people pleasers, they make easy targets. He did well for himself, considering where we started. Got into computers early, took night classes, and ended up working in IT. I remember him showing me his first real office badge, beaming like a little boy again. "We did it, Dad," he'd said. "We're moving up." I first heard Lauren's name in passing. "There's this woman at work," he said one evening over coffee. "She's helping with the new system." His ears turned a little red when he said it. I noticed, but I didn't press. A few weeks later, her name came up again, then again. Before long, it was, "Dad, I'd like you to meet someone." When he brought her over, I'll admit, she was impressive. Perfect hair. Perfect teeth. The kind of outfit that looked simple, but probably cost more than my month's rent. She had that polished way of talking, like she'd been to all the right schools and never had to count pennies at the grocery store. She smiled a lot, asked polite questions about my work, complimented the old pictures of Mark on the wall. But there was something too smooth about her. Like every reaction was rehearsed, every laugh the exact right volume. When I'd crack a joke, she'd glance at Mark first, like checking whether it was acceptable to laugh. Her parents came later, Gary and Carol. They drove up in a shiny SUV and stepped into my little house like they were doing a charity visit. Gary had that soft handshake men get when they haven't worked with their hands a day in their lives. Carol looked me up and down as if she were taking measurements and I'd come up short. "So you're Mark's father," she said, eyes lingering on my grease-stained work pants. "He's told us so much." I never heard any of that, so much. When the conversation turned to careers and investments, they talked over me like I wasn't there. Gary helped himself to my coffee, then made some comment about how hardworking people like you are the backbone of this country, which is usually what folks say, right before they tell you why you don't understand something. The wedding was like stepping into another world. They rented a vineyard 2 towns over, all white tents and fairy lights, a string quartet playing while guests sipped champagne. I wore my one decent suit, the same one I'd worn to my wife's funeral. I felt like a fraud, my collar too tight, my shoes pinching. Lauren looked beautiful, I won't deny it. Mark in his tux looked so proud and a little lost. On our side of the venue, there were a few cousins, my old coworker from the garage, some neighbors. On their side, rows and rows of well-dressed strangers who smelled like expensive cologne and money. At one point, as I was carrying my plate past, I heard Carol talking to one of her friends. "At least she's moving up in the world," she said, with a little laugh. "He seems sweet, but, humble beginnings." Her eyes flicked toward our small group of guests as she said it. I pretended not to hear, but it sat in my gut like a stone. Later, near the bar, I caught Gary saying to another man, "We'll make sure she's taken care of. We've set up some things. Can't leave it all up to him." That way stuck with me. Not the kids. Why? Still, when Mark pulled me aside, his face shining, and said, "Dad, can you believe this? I never thought I'd have a day like this." I pushed my doubts down. I clapped him on the shoulder and told him I was happy for him. Maybe I wanted to believe love smoothed out differences more than it really does. After the honeymoon, the house talk started. Their little apartment wasn't enough, Lauren said. She wanted a yard, better schools, room for future kids. Mark agreed, of course. He'd grown up hearing me say sorry every time I said no to something he wanted. Now he had a chance to give his own child more. One afternoon he came by all excited, waving some papers. Lauren's parents offered to help with the down payment, he said. "They'll go on the title with us, just to protect their investment." "It's normal," they said. "And look at this place, Dad." He showed me pictures on his phone. Big kitchen, 2-car garage, yard out back with a swing set already installed. I studied the screen, then looked at him. "Son, when someone gives you that much money," I said carefully, "they're not just giving. They're buying something. Maybe not right away, but they'll want to say." He laughed it off. "Come on, Dad. They're just trying to help. We couldn't afford that neighborhood otherwise. I can finally give Eli a childhood we never had." He was so hopeful, so sure he could balance it all. I didn't push. I wish I had. When Eli was born, everything shifted for them. For all of us. He was this tiny, squirming thing with his father's eyes and his mother's pout. I remember holding him in the hospital room, my big calloused hands awkward against his soft skin, and feeling something unclench in my chest. Another chance, I thought. But from the start, Lauren's family took the driver's seat. They picked the pediatrician, a specialist we've known for years. Chose the daycare. They have a waiting list, but we pulled some strings. Decided which holidays would be celebrated where. I got my time, but it was always peripheral. I could take Eli to the park, pick him up for ice cream, but when I suggested building a little playset in their backyard, something we could do together on weekends, Gary laughed. "We don't want you to strain yourself at your age," he said. "We'll hire a contractor. Let the professionals handle it." It stung more than I let on. I wasn't asking to lift a house. I was asking to build a swing for my grandson. Little by little, I started seeing the red flags I'm ashamed I ignored. Mark stopped coming over alone. If he visited, Lauren or one of her parents was always in tow, hovering. Phone calls got shorter. Where we used to talk about everything, car troubles, work politics, silly things Eli had said. Now he was always in a hurry. "I can't talk long, Dad, I gotta go," he'd say. "We're heading out." Or "Lauren needs me." I remember one Thanksgiving at their house. Mark showed up late to his own dinner, breathless, with a dark bruise blooming on his upper arm. I pulled him aside in the kitchen. "What happened there?" I asked, nodding toward it. He glanced down and gave this weak chuckle. "Oh, that." Bumped into a cabinet. "I'm a klutz, you know me." From the doorway, Lauren called, "Mark, did you forget the bread again?" Her voice sounded light, but there was an edge to it that made him flinch. Later, as he fumbled with place settings, I heard her mutter under her breath, "Just loud enough. Sometimes I swear you're useless without my parents." He went still, then pasted on that careful smile he'd been wearing more and more. Holidays started migrating completely to their side. "It's just more convenient for everyone," Lauren told me. "We've got the space. You don't need to fuss with cooking anymore." At first, they'd say, "You should come by if you feel up to it." And I would. Then the invitations got vaguer. "We'll see how crazy things get." Then nothing at all. I started having drive-by visits. Instead, stopping by with a toy for Illy, catching 10 minutes at the door. I told myself this was normal. Kids grow up, have their own lives. You can't expect to be the center of their world forever. But late at night, lying in my quiet house, I'd think about the way Mark's laughter had changed. How it came out shorter, more forced. How he'd once said, half joking, over a beer at my kitchen table, "Dad, have you ever felt like you're a guest in your own house?" I'd laughed it off. I told him marriage was about compromise, about making room for each other's families. He nodded, looking down at his hands, and changed the subject. About 2 months before that terrible Christmas, my phone rang close to midnight. I remember because I was dozing in my chair, the TV still on. I picked up without checking the number. "Dead." Mark's voice sounded thin, frayed. "Are you awake?" My heart jumped. "Yes, son. What's going on?" There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing. Then, quietly, "I think I need your help. Things are getting bad here." The words slammed into me. I sat up straighter. "What do you mean bad? Are you and Lauren?" In the background, I heard her voice, muffled but sharp. "Who are you talking to?" "Slate." He lowered his voice. "I can't." The line went dead. A minute later, a text came through. "Sorry, everything's fine. Just work stress. Talk tomorrow." We never talked about it. He dodged my questions the next time I called. I told myself I was reading too much into it. Standing in that basement, staring at the chain on his wrist, every little moment snapped into place like a cruel puzzle finally finished. All those things I'd brushed off, all the times I'd told myself not to meddle, not to be the overbearing father, they weren't nothing. I thought they just didn't like me. I had no idea what they were doing to my son behind closed doors. I dropped to my knees beside him so fast my old joints screamed, but I barely felt it. All I saw was the raw, angry flesh around that metal cuff, the way the chain cut into his skin when he shifted. "Hold still," I muttered, fingers fumbling at the shackle like I could pry it off with willpower alone. The metal was thick, the kind you'd see on an engine hoist, not a human wrist. At the end of the chain, a heavy padlock clamped it to an eye bolt drilled straight into the concrete. "Where's the damn key?" I hissed, yanking at the lock until my knuckles went white. Mark winced. "Don't," he croaked. "You'll just hurt yourself." Up close, he looked worse. There were fading yellow and green bruises on his forearms, fresher ones on his ribs where his shirt had ridden up. When I put a hand on his side to steady him as he tried to sit up, he flinched hard and sucked in a sharp breath. "Easy, easy," I said, heart pounding. Under my palm I could feel how thin he'd gotten. My sturdy, broad-shouldered son, hollowed out like someone had been scooping pieces out of him when I wasn't looking. "How long have you been down here?" I asked. He blinked, unfocused. "Tonight, since right before dinner. But it's not the first time." His voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard, forcing down the wave of nausea rising in me. Older scars circled his wrist. pale bands where the skin had thickened. This wasn't a one-off outburst. This was routine. I wanted to roar up those stairs and tear through that house like a storm, but something in his eyes stopped me. Shame. The kind a grown man shouldn't have to feel in front of his own father. "Talk to me, son," I said quietly. "How did it come to this?" He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You remember when I told you I was stressed at work? All the new projects, all the deadlines." He licked his cracked lips. "That was part of it. But it was more than that. I don't know, tired all the time. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't think straight. Any little thing set me off inside." The pressure just built. He stared at the chain, not meeting my eyes. "One day a few months ago, we had this big rollout go sideways. The system crashed, the clients were furious, and my boss was breathing down my neck. I came home late and Lauren started in about some school form I'd forgotten to sign. I just snapped. I yelled. I hit the counter just once, with my fist. Scared Eli. Scared myself." He swallowed again, tears welling. "I'd never done that before, Dad. Not once. I apologized over and over. But Lauren, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Next morning, she said she was worried, that I needed help. She made an appointment with her family doctor." "Her doctor?" I said. "Why didn't you go to your own?" He shook his head. "She said her guy was better with these things." I was so ashamed of how I'd acted, I just went along. At the appointment, I barely talked. Lauren did most of it. Told him I'd been moody, not sleeping, fixated on finances, her words. Told him about that one night like it was a regular thing. His mouth twisted. He didn't ask many questions. Just nodded, scribbled a lot, gave me some pills. Said I had anxiety, maybe depression, maybe something else, I don't even know, Dad. All the medical words went over my head. I just wanted to feel normal again. "And did you?" I asked. "Not at first," he said. "The meds made me foggy. I started forgetting things, losing track of time. Lauren took over the calendar, the bills, everything. Said she was protecting me from myself." He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "Then they started telling people I was unstable, that I was having episodes." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Upstairs, a burst of laughter floated faintly down. So out of place it might as well have been from another world. "The first time she tied me up," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "was after we argued about money. She'd moved some funds around without telling me. I got upset. Raised my voice. Didn't even touch her, but she started crying and saying I was scaring Eli. Next thing I knew, Gary was there. He said I needed to calm down, that I was having an episode. Lauren brought out some soft rope from the garage. They tied my hands to the bed frame so I wouldn't hurt myself. Just for an hour, they said." His hand tightened around the chain. "It felt like days." "You didn't call the police?" I asked, though I could guess the answer. He gave me a tired look. "And say what?" "My wife and her father tied me to the bed because I yelled about the checking account. They told me I'd overreacted, that I didn't remember it right. That the meds were messing with my memory." Gradually, what had started as just for his own safety grew teeth. It escalated. He went on. "Every time I questioned something, money, where Eli was, why Lauren spent so many nights with her parents, they'd say I was getting worked up again. They'd lock me in the guest room. Then it was the basement because you punched the wall last time, which I didn't. Then the chains came when I tried to leave one night. I said I was taking Eli and going to a hotel. Gary blocked the door. Lauren called it kidnapping. Next thing I know, I'm on the floor with this on my wrist." He rattled the chain once, the sound scraping along my nerves. "They told me I was dangerous unmedicated," he whispered. "Said I couldn't be alone with Eli unless I proved I could behave. They kept him away from me. I could hear him upstairs, asking where I was. They told him Daddy needed quiet time." My hands were shaking. I dug my fingers into my knees to steady them. "And tonight?" I asked. "What happened tonight?" He closed his eyes. "Lauren brought more paperwork. Said Gary had found a way to lower our taxes. She wanted me to sign a power of attorney, just for the finances, so she could handle things while I focused on my health." His voice hardened a fraction. I said no. I told her I wanted to review it with someone who wasn't related to her. "Maybe you. Maybe a lawyer." He let out a humorless laugh. She flipped. Said I didn't trust her after everything her parents had done for us. Gary stormed in, waving those papers, saying I was ungrateful, that the house was more theirs than mine anyway, since they'd put up so much of the down payment. His eyes finally met mine. I told them I wasn't signing away my rights, not to the house, not to Eli. That's when Gary said, "Well, looks like we're having another episode." He grabbed my arm. Lauren started crying on cue, saying I was scaring her. They dragged me down here. Said I needed to cool off. Locked me up, then went back upstairs and told everyone I had a migraine. I stared at him, my mind racing. This wasn't heat of the moment madness. This was organized, intentional. "Mark," I said slowly, "have they tried this kind of paperwork thing before?" He nodded. "A few weeks ago I found a folder on the family computer. It was hidden inside a folder labeled recipes." He gave a tired half smile. "I guess they didn't think I'd look there. Inside were drafts of things, legal stuff, divorce papers, custody motions, incident logs, dates and descriptions of times I supposedly lost control. Half of it was exaggerated. Some of it never happened." His face crumpled. "They're building a case, Dad. To say I'm abusive. Unstable. To take the house. Take Eli. Take everything." My stomach dropped. I thought of all the times Gary had talked about protecting their investment. The little comments about teaching Mark how to handle real money. They weren't just meddling in laws. They were laying groundwork. "And you tried to call me?" I said, the memory of that late-night phone call hitting me full force. He nodded, staring at the floor. "That night, when I said I needed your help." Lauren heard. After she hung up the call. "They kept me down here for 2 days. No lights half the time. Told my work I was on medical leave because of my condition. When I tried to tell my boss the truth later, she was already ahead of me. She'd sent emails from my account explaining my episodes." He looked at me, eyes desperate. "They say I'm sick, Dad. That I'm paranoid. That I'm making things up. Some days, when they talk in circles long enough, I start to wonder if I really am losing it. But I know this isn't right. I know chaining your husband to a wall isn't normal." His voice broke. "I'm not crazy, am I?" I reached out and gripped his shoulder gently, careful of the bruises. "You're not crazy," I said, my own voice thick. "They're making you feel that way because it's easier to steal from a sick man than a sane one." A tear spilled down his cheeks. He bit his lip hard, like he didn't think he deserved to cry. "They told me you wouldn't understand," he whispered. "That you'd take their side. That you'd say I was overreacting, that I should be grateful. They said you're old, that you don't get how things work now." I felt something hot and fierce burn through the cold horror settling in my bones. They hadn't just chained my son. They'd used my age, my supposed irrelevance, as part of their cage. "Listen to me," I said. "I may be old, but I'm not blind or stupid. This isn't about your health. This is about control, about money, about them wanting that house and Eli and everything else tied up in a neat little bow with their name on it." Above us, footsteps thumped across the floor. A chair scraped. Then the faint creak of the basement door opening a crack. "Is everything okay down there?" Lauren's voice floated down, high and sing-song. "He's still sleeping, right?" In a heartbeat, I schooled my face, burying the rage. I pitched my voice up a notch, trying to sound casual, even a little amused. "Out like a light." I called back, forcing a chuckle that made my throat ache. "You work him too hard." There was a pause. "All right," she said. "Don't let him talk your ear off. Dinner's almost ready." The door clicked shut. Her footsteps retreated. I leaned close to Mark, lowering my voice to a whisper. "Don't say another word right now," I murmured. "Not to them. Not to anyone. We're going to get you out of here, but we have to be smart." He stared at me, searching my face like he was afraid to hope. "What can you do?" he asked. "They have everything. The money, the papers, the house." "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I know this, if what you're telling me is true. They won't see what's coming." He closed his eyes, a shudder running through him. Whether it was from fear or the cold or the tiny ember of hope, I couldn't say. I squeezed his shoulder once more, then forced myself to stand. Every part of me rebelled at the idea of leaving him down there, chained like a dog while I walked back into that warm, bright house. But if I tore into them now, without proof, without a plan, they'd spin it. They'd call me confused, claim I'd misunderstood a therapeutic restraint, say I was old and meddling. I took one last look at him, memorizing the sight I never wanted to see again. "I'll be back," I said quietly. "Soon. Be ready." Then I turned and climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. As I opened the basement door, the smell of roasted meat and spiced wine rushed at me. Laughter rose from the dining room, clinking glasses, the clatter of silverware. I stepped into the light, pulled the mask of the harmless old man back over my face, and smiled at the people who had chained my son in the dark below their feet. On the surface, I was just Mark's father, dropping by for Christmas. Inside, I was already counting every word, every look, every lie, tucking them away. They thought they'd broken him. They had no idea what they'd just woken up in me. Coming up out of that basement felt like stepping through some invisible wall. 1 second I was in the cold, staring at my son in chains. The next, I was back in the soft glow of their designer light fixtures, surrounded by the smell of rosemary roast and the tinkle of Christmas music. I wiped my hands on my pants out of habit, like I could wipe away what I'd just seen. My face did what it had learned to do over 6 decades. It smoothed out. I let my shoulders round a little more, softened my eyes, put on that vague half-smile people expect from old men who don't quite keep up anymore. From the hallway I watched the party. The dining room looked like something out of a magazine. White tablecloth, crystal glasses catching the light, tall candles flickering in silver holders. Gary sat at the head of the table, carving meat like a benevolent king. Carol floated around topping off drinks, touching shoulders, throwing her head back in laughter. Voices drifted over the clink of cutlery. "Such a shame about Mark," someone said. "He's so young." Lauren sighed dramatically, dabbing at the corner of her eye, as if tears might smudge her perfect makeup. "It's been hard," she said, "but we're managing. We just want what's best for him. And for Ely, of course." Another guest leaned in. "You're amazing for stepping up like this. Most people would have walked away." I clenched my teeth behind my smile so hard my jaw ached. 10 feet below these people, my son lay on a concrete floor with a chain around his wrist. And up here, they were praising his captors as saints. Carol must have noticed me standing there, because she bustled over, glass in hand, all warm. "There you are," she said, as if she'd been worried sick. "We were wondering if you got lost. These big houses can be confusing." I forced a chuckle. "Just stretching my legs," I said. "Didn't want to cramp up sitting too long." She patted my arm the way you might pat a friendly old dog. "Well, come sit. We kept a place for you." She led me to the table, sliding me into a chair near the far end. Close enough to hear everything, far enough that my opinion wouldn't matter. I sat down, staring at my plate as the conversation rushed around me again. At All Eyes school recital, Carol was saying to a woman across from her. It was so embarrassing. Mark stood up in the middle of Jingle Bells, started muttering about the lights being too bright, then just walked out. Poor Eli was on stage, staring after him. I looked up sharply. That wasn't how Mark had told it. He'd mentioned being late because of traffic, that was all. Carol gave a sympathetic little shake of her head. "We've all agreed not to make a big deal of it, for Eli's sake. Kids are so sensitive." But honestly, it broke my heart. The woman clucked her tongue. "It's a good thing he has you to keep things together." All eyes went to my daughter-in-law. She gave a small, humble smile, taking a sip of wine like some noble martyr. "We're just doing what any family would do," she said softly. "When someone is sick, you don't abandon them." My fork scraped against the plate. I imagined standing up, slamming my fists on the table, shouting, "Sick. Is that what we're calling chains now?" But I could see the scene play out too clearly. The shocked faces, the quick, patronizing smiles. Lauren's tearful protest. He's confused, he doesn't understand Mark's condition. They had the narrative ready. They'd been rehearsing it for months. After a while, Lauren drifted down toward my end of the table. She slipped into the empty chair beside me, laying a manicured hand lightly on my forearm. "I hope you're not upset we didn't formally invite you tonight," she said, pitching her voice low so it sounded private, intimate. "We just thought it might be too loud for you. Late nights can be hard when you're, older." I looked into her smiling face and saw the woman who stood at the top of those basement stairs and told me I couldn't go down. The woman who chained my son and then come up to pour gravy. I get on fine, I said mildly. I still remember my way around. She laughed, a little too loud. Of course you do. I didn't mean it that way. It's just at Thanksgiving you seemed a bit overwhelmed. You repeated yourself a few times. My mom was worried maybe you're not as sharp as you used to be. There it was, neatly planted in the open. Funny, I said, letting my eyes crinkle. I remember Thanksgiving just fine. Turkey was dry. She blinked. For a second, the pleasant mask slipped a fraction, then snapped back. Well, she said, squeezing my arm, I just want you to know, if anything ever happened to you, we'd make sure Mark and Ely were taken care of. You don't need to worry about legal stuff at your age. That's what we're here for. My stomach turned. So it wasn't enough to bleed my son dry. They had their eyes on whatever crumbs I might leave him one day too. If they could paint me as confused as declining, they could maneuver around anything I tried to do for him. Before I could respond, Gary appeared at my other side with a bottle of something amber and expensive. Single malt, he offered, already pouring before I answered. Good for the circulation. He handed me the glass, his own already half empty. His smile was big, a fable, but his eyes were probing. Tough year, he said, clinking his glass lightly against mine. With everything going on with Mark. We're so glad we can all be here together, though. Family, right? I took a sip. It burned going down, familiar in a way, reminding me of the cheap whiskey I used to nurse after double shifts, but smoother. Dangerous. How's he been, growing up? Gary asked, voice casual. Any odd behaviors we should know about? Sometimes these things run in families. He said it like he was discussing a bad knee, not my son's mind. Odd, I repeated, keeping my tone light. He was steady as they come. Teachers loved him, never got into trouble, not once. Gary's brow creased, a tiny flicker of annoyance. No temper, no mood swings. Only time he ever lost his temper was when someone took the last slice of pizza, I said. Even then, he shared it. Gary chuckled dutifully, but the lines around his mouth deepened. He'd been fishing for a story to back up their one stable tale. I hadn't handed him one. Like I keep telling Lauren, he said, topping up his own drink. You shouldn't worry about paperwork at your age. It's all too complicated. Let us handle it so you can relax. I've been reading contracts since before you were out of short pants, I said pleasantly. Car loans, mortgage papers. Funny thing, ink looks the same no matter how old you are. He studied me for a second, then smiled wider, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. A little later, between dessert and coffee, I slipped away from the table and found Eli in the den, sitting cross-legged on the carpet with a video game controller in his hands. The sound was low. He kept glancing toward the doorway like a rabbit watching for hawks. When he saw me, his face lit up again. Grandpa, he whispered, dropping the controller and rushing over. He wrapped his arms around my waist, holding on longer than a normal hello needed. Hey, buddy, I murmured, ruffling his hair, having fun. He looked toward the hallway, then tugged me closer to the couch, lowering his voice. Mom says Dad's sick, he said, but he just seems sad. Sometimes I hear him crying downstairs. My throat tightened. Downstairs, I asked gently. What do you mean? He fidgeted with the hem of his sweatshirt, like in the basement. At night, I asked Mom, and she said I was dreaming, but I wasn't. He hesitated. Grandpa, did you ever get locked in a room when you were bad? Every muscle in me went rigid. I forced my face to stay neutral. No, kiddo, I said. If I was bad, my dad made me fix what I broke. That was enough. He nodded slowly, eyes big. Mom says Grandpa. He meant me, I realized. Doesn't understand how things are now. She says you're old and get confused. But you don't seem confused. Something hot flashed behind my eyes. Before I could answer, Carol's voice floated in from the hallway. Lie. Where are you, sweetheart? Oh, there you are. She stepped into the room, all smiles. We don't want to bother Grandpa too much, honey. He needs his rest. He's not bothering me, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. She tilted her head, that patronizing smile never wavering. You know how kids exaggerate things, she said lightly. Always with their wild imaginations. She rested a hand on Eli's shoulder, gently but firmly turning him toward the door. "Come help me with the cookies," she cooed. "Let Grandpa sit." As they left, Eli looked back at me, his eyes saying what his mouth didn't dare. I watched Carol and Lauren and Gary for the rest of the night. The way they steered conversations deflected questions, always circling back to how brave Lauren was, how unfortunate Mark's condition had become. Any time the topic drifted too close to specifics, one of them would redirect it with a joke or a refill of wine. Not once did anyone ask to speak to Mark. Not once did anyone suggest checking on him, not beyond a polite, "How is he doing?" That was quickly answered with rehearsed lines about progress and treatment. They had built their story well, brick by brick, until everyone in that room saw them as caregivers, not captors. And me. I was just the aging father on the fringe, easy to dismiss if I made trouble. By the time plates were cleared and people started reaching for coats, my hands had steadied. The first flare of panic I'd felt in the basement had cooled into something harder, sharper. If I blew up now, they'd win. It would be two unstable men in one family. Mark and his overreacting old father. They'd tighten the screws, close ranks, maybe move Mark somewhere I couldn't reach him. So I played the part. At the door, as guests called goodnight, I turned to Lauren. I made my face soft, my voice gentle. "Thank you for having me," I said. For a split second, confusion flickered across her eyes. She hadn't expected gratitude. She gave a small, stiff smile. "Of course," she said. "We're family." "Family," I repeated. As she turned to hug another guest, I slipped away down the hall one last time. The basement door was closed, but not locked from this side. I opened it a crack, listening. The faint clink of chain reached me, along with Mark's soft breathing. "Mark." I whispered down the stairwell. "It's me." His voice floated up thin. "Tomorrow," I said. "I'm coming back. Be ready." I closed the door and walked out into the cold night air, my breath steaming, my heart pounding not from fear this time, but from something else. They thought they could twist reality to fit their story. They thought they'd isolated him, and me, so completely that no one could touch them. Walking back to my car between their shiny vehicles, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't take them on alone. I needed someone who understood how all this legal nonsense worked. Someone who could turn the truth I'd seen in that basement into something the world would have to listen to. The drive home that night was a blur of headlights and snow. I know I stopped at red lights because I'm still here to tell this, but I couldn't have told you which streets I took. All I could see over and over was that chain around Mark's wrist, the way his eyes had looked when he whispered, "You have to get me out of here." By the time I walked into my house, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. The quiet hit me like a punch. No music, no voices, just the groan of the old heater kicking on. I stood in the doorway, coat still on, and felt something between rage and helplessness crash over me. For a minute, I actually reached for the phone to dial 911. What stopped me wasn't doubt about what I'd seen. It was the memory of Lauren's voice, perfectly calm, talking about Mark's condition, the way Gary had already been asking about odd behaviors. Growing up, I could hear it. Hayes' confused officer. Mark just needed to be restrained for his own safety. He gets so worked up. You know how dementia can start suddenly. They'd spin it on both of us. Two unstable men under one roof. I couldn't afford to give them that head start. I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair all night, coat draped over the arm, staring at nothing while the hours crawled by. When the first gray light seeped through the blinds, I knew I couldn't carry this alone. There was one person I trusted to look me in the eye and tell me if I'd lost it. Ruth had been my neighbor for 30 years before she moved a few streets over after her second hip surgery. Retired nurse, sharp as a tack. The kind of woman who'd brought casseroles when my wife died and kept showing up long after everyone else drifted away. She'd watched Mark grow up, bandaged his knees, slipped him cookies when I said no. I drove over as soon as I thought it was a decent hour. Her little bungalow looked the same as always, wind chimes tinkling on the porch, a faded welcome mat at the door. When she opened it and saw my face, her smile vanished. "What happened?" she asked, stepping aside before I could answer. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't bother with small talk. I sat at her kitchen table, hands around a mug I didn't remember her pouring, and told her everything, every detail. The basement, the chain, the bruises, the way Lauren had blocked the door, the party going on overhead like nothing was wrong. She didn't interrupt much. Just listened, her eyes getting harder with each word. By the time I finished, my throat was raw. When I finally trailed off, there was a long silence. The heater clicked on. Somewhere in the house a clock ticked. I knew something was off, she said at last, voice low. I didn't know it was that bad, but I knew. You did? I asked, startled. She nodded. I've been by their place a few times this past year. Wanted to drop off some cookies for Eli, you know. First couple of times, Lauren met me at the door, all smiles, said Mark was resting, or at treatment. Then, a few months back, she told me he was in rehab. Said he had a problem he had to work through. Rehab? I repeated, heat rising in my chest. Has never touched anything stronger than a beer with me. Ruth snorted. I've seen enough real rehab cases to know the signs, and Mark never gave me that vibe. Then one afternoon, I was on their porch and I heard something. Like metal hitting concrete, and a kind of muffled yell. Lauren laughed it off, said it was the dryer acting up. But it didn't sound like any dryer I've ever heard. She looked me straight in the eye. I've seen controlling families in my nursing days. Husbands, wives, kids. I know abuse when I smell it. I gripped the mug tighter. The relief that she believed me almost hurt. At the same time, knowing signs had been there, that people had heard things made the guilt twist deeper. What do I do? Ruth, I asked. If I go charging in there alone, they'll have me arrested for trespassing and spin some story about his treatment plan. You don't go in alone, she said firmly. You go in with the law behind you. But before that, you talk to someone who knows how these people play their games. A lawyer, I murmured. She nodded. And maybe the police afterward. But you want to walk in there knowing what you're talking about. Those people have money. People with money are used to getting their way. They'll have papers, doctors, you name it. You need someone on your side who can read through all that. I thought of Daniel then. I'd met Daniel a few years back when a neighbor tried to claim part of my yard after a messy fence repair. Young guy, maybe early 40s. But he'd treated me with respect, explained things without talking down. He'd gotten it sorted with a couple of letters. Wouldn't even take all the money I offered. I called his office from Ruth's phone. My hands still shook a bit as I spoke to the receptionist, but when I said, urgent, and family matter, possible abuse, she squeezed me in for that afternoon. Ruth insisted on driving me, muttering something about, your hands shouldn't be anywhere near a steering wheel right now. I didn't argue. Daniel's office was a modest place above a bank downtown, not some glass tower. Shelves of law books, a framed degree, a picture of him with 2 kids at a little league game. He came out to the waiting area himself, hand extended. Mr. Harris, he said, good to see you again. Though from your call, I'm guessing this isn't a pleasant visit. But we sat across from each other at his desk. I told the story again. By now the words felt worn, like a path I was walking over and over, but each time I spoke them, they cut fresh. At first, he listened with the kind of polite caution I'd expected. Lawyers live in a world where everyone has a story. But when I got to the part about the chain, about the bruises, about Mark not being allowed to see his own son unsupervised, the careful neutrality in his face shifted into something sharper. Let me make sure I understand, he said slowly. Your son is being physically restrained in his own home, against his will, by his wife and her parents. They've told neighbors he's in rehab, told you he's mentally ill, and they've been pushing him to sign legal documents giving them control over finances and possibly more. You've seen at least some of those documents. Power of attorney, I said. Trusts. Something about the house. I didn't get to read them all, she was always waving them around, and he found folders on the computer. Divorce papers, custody stuff, incident reports she and her mother wrote. Daniel leaned back, fingers steepled. If even half of what you're saying is true, this isn't just a family matter, he said. It's criminal. The word landed between us like a weight. Criminal, I echoed. Unlawful imprisonment, he said, counting off slowly. Assault, coercive control, possibly fraud if they're creating a false narrative to gain financial advantage. financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. If they've managed to get a doctor to rubber stamp some diagnosis to justify all this. He sighed. The incidents logs in the rehab story. Classic groundwork for a custody and divorce land grab. They paint him as unstable so they can take the child and the house with minimal challenge. I've seen versions of this before. Not always with chains, but enough to know the pattern. My stomach churned. So what do we do? Call the police? Eventually, yes, he said. But if we call them right now with just your word against theirs, they'll walk the officers through a nice, clean house, show them some pill bottles with your son's name, maybe a note from a doctor, and say they're following a treatment plan. They'll say you're confused, upset, maybe not entirely reliable. No offense. None taken. I muttered. You need proof, Daniel went on. Pictures. Videos if possible. Audio recordings of them admitting what they're doing. Any documents you or your son can access voluntarily. Emails, drafts of those incident logs. Anything that shows this isn't a one-in-time misunderstanding but a pattern. I rubbed my temples. Technology wasn't exactly my specialty. I could fix a carburetor with my eyes closed, but I still wrote checks at the grocery store. I don't even know how to turn on half the gadgets they've got in that house. I admitted. I wouldn't know where to start. Daniel smiled faintly. Then you get someone who does know. That's when Tyler came to mind. My late sister's grandson. I still thought of him as a kid, but he was in his 20s now, studying computer science at the community college. Last I'd heard, he was the one all the neighbors called when their Wi-Fi went down. I called him that evening. When he picked up and heard my voice, he sounded pleasantly surprised. Uncle Jim. Everything okay? No, I said. Not even close. You busy tomorrow? He hesitated. I was going to finish a project, but what's going on? I told him. Not everything. I left out a few details until I could see his face. But enough. Enough that there was a long, stunned silence on the other end. Chains, he repeated softly. In the basement. That, are you sure? I saw it with my own eyes. I said. I know it sounds crazy. That's why I need you. I need someone who knows how to record, how to save files off a computer. Someone they won't suspect at first. He let out a slow breath. I can't believe Mark. Uncle Mark. He used to help me with my math homework. Hey, he wouldn't make this up. Is not making anything up, I said. But they're saying he is. They're saying we're both nuts. Another pause. Then, more firmly, all right, I'll help. I can set up a camera in your jacket, something small. No one pays attention to old men's coats, right? A bitter little laugh escaped me. Wes, that's one upside to being written off. The next day, we met at Daniel's office. It felt strange, sitting there with a lawyer on one side and a kid I remembered as a freckled 6-year-old on the other. Now with a laptop covered in stickers and fingers flying as he pulled up diagrams of cameras. We laid out a rough plan. Nothing heroic, nothing that involved breaking down doors. Just collecting truth. First, we get visual proof, Daniel said. Mark chained, the state he's in, the basement setup. Then, we get them on record admitting they've restrained him. Saying it's for his own good is still an admission. After that, we start backing up any digital evidence your son can access. He has email, online storage, those draft documents he found. If he can get you login details. Tyler can help pull copies. And all this without tipping them off. Tyler added, if they realize you're onto them before we have enough, they could move him. Or wipe devices. The thought of them moving Mark somewhere deeper farther, where I couldn't reach, made my chest tighten. So we start small, Daniel said. You go back to the house with a believable reason. Bring a toy for Ely, say you forgot something last night. Tyler waits nearby, recording from the car too, just in case. You asked to see Mark, see what stories they tell. That's how I found myself, the very next afternoon. Standing on my son's doorstep again, a plastic bag with some cookies in my hand. Tyler's old sedan parked half a block down, his phone set to record. Lauren opened the door after a couple of knocks. This time, the smile didn't even try to reach her eyes. Back so soon, she said lightly. I held up the bag. Baked too many. I lied. Thought Eli might like some. How's Mark feeling today? Her fingers tightened on the edge of the door. He's not here, she said smoothly. He had a rough night, so we arranged for him to stay at a private facility for observation, just for a few days. My heart thudded. A facility, I repeated. Funny, his car's still in the driveway. She didn't miss a beat. They picked him up, she said. Transport service. It's all very professional. You of all people should be relieved he's getting the help he needs. Out on the street, Tyler angled his phone a bit higher, capturing her voice from where he sat with the window cracked. I forced a nod. What's the place called? Maybe I'll send a card. Her smile tightened. It's really not a place you can just contact directly, Jim. They prefer family go through the treatment team. Less confusing for everyone. In other words, she hadn't thought that far, or she didn't expect to be questioned. I didn't push. Not right then. I handed her the cookies, asked if she'd at least give Eli a hug for me. She said she would, though her eyes darted toward the hallway nervous. As I turned to go, my gaze flicked, almost by accident, toward the narrow basement window along the side of the house. The curtain that had always been neatly drawn was now slightly askew, leaving a triangle of glass exposed. Behind it, a shadow moved. Just a quick shape, a shift. But I knew the outline of my own son's shoulders, even through frosted glass. I walked back to the car on autopilot. Once I slid into the passenger seat, Tyler thrust his phone at me. Look, he said, zooming in on a photo he'd snapped while I was at the door. Grainy, through glass, but clear enough. The figure at the basement window, hand raised like he'd been trying to see out. Mark, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. If he's still there and she lied about the facility, that's huge. Document everything. Don't go in alone tonight. I looked from the message to the photo, then back at the house, where Lauren had already closed the door, shutting the warm light in. The fear I'd been carrying since Christmas Eve didn't disappear. But now, sitting there with a lawyer's words on my screen and my nephew's evidence in my hand, it had company. For the first time since I'd seen that chain, I didn't feel completely alone. We met again in Daniel's office the next morning. The three of us crowded around his desk like we were planning a bank heist instead of trying to save my son. On the wall behind him, there was a whiteboard he used for trial prep. This time, instead of case numbers and timelines for car accidents, he started writing names. Mark, he said, jotting it at the top. An arrow to Lauren, then Gary and Carol. Then, house, Ali, money. Okay, he went on, uncapping another marker. Let's lay out what we know. He drew a quick timeline down the side. Panic episode, doctor visits, treatment, restraints, documents, basement. With each word, the whole sick pattern became clearer. Motives, Daniel said, tapping the board. On the surface, helping a mentally ill family member. Underneath, control of the house, control of Ely, and possibly preempting any inheritance your son might get from you. I flinched. Hearing it said out loud like that made it feel more real and more disgusting. Tyler sat to my left, laptop open, typing as we talked. It was strange seeing him so serious. The last time I'd watched him work that hard was on a jigsaw puzzle at my kitchen table when he was 8. Daniel turned to me. We can't just break in and drag Mark out, he said. They'll call the police, claim you're kidnapping a mentally ill man, maybe even try to get you charged. We need the police with us, and we need hard evidence in hand before we go in. So we get it, I said. Evidence. Whatever it takes. That's the spirit. Tyler murmured, then cleared his throat when I looked at him. Sorry. Just yeah, we get it. Daniel opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small case. Inside was something that looked like a shirt button with a tiny black dot in the middle. Tyler suggested this, he said, glancing at the kid. Button camera. Records video and audio, saves to an internal drive. We'll sew it onto your jacket. No one pays attention to old men's coats, remember? I snorted. Nice to know my invisibility has some uses. Tyler grinned, but his eyes were grave. We'll put an audio recorder in the lining too, he said. Redundancy. If one fails, hopefully the other won't. But you have to act natural. This isn't like in the movies, Uncle Jim. If they see the camera, we're done. They'll lock everything down. Daniel nodded. The goal is simple but not easy, he said. You go back to the house with an excuse. Maybe you forgot something, or you're worried after hearing Mark was moved. You talk. You gently push Lauren. Get her to admit Mark's at home, that he's being secured. there because of his episodes. Maybe get Gary to brag about how they have to keep him in line. Ideally, one of them says something about the chains being for his safety. And the basement, I asked. I can't stomach leaving him down there much longer. We need footage from there, Daniel said. Tyler reached into his bag and pulled out a cheap flip phone, the kind you could buy at a drugstore with cash. Burner, he said. No apps, but it's got a camera and voice recorder. If we can get this to Uncle Mark without them noticing, he can film the chain, the bolt, his own injuries. Record himself talking about what's been happening. Even 30 seconds could make a difference. I turned the little phone over in my hand. It felt flimsy, but right then it might as well have been a lifeline. How do I get it to him? I asked. You'll have to get back down there, Daniel said. Same way you did on Christmas. Play the confused father, insist on saying hello. Don't take no for an answer, but stay harmless. While she's focused on you, you palm the phone to Mark. You can also try to lift the chain a bit, show the camera the attachment, maybe snap a few photos yourself. But if she gets suspicious, you back off. And the paper trail? Tyler asked. He said there were folders, drafts, maybe emails. If Mark can remember any usernames and passwords, Daniel said, we can try to access his personal accounts. Anything he legitimately has the right to. No hacking, yet. But if he's got emails where Lauren talks about his incidents, or early drafts of those logs on a shared drive, that will help later when we ask a judge for subpoenas. I stared at the whiteboard, at the arrows and lines connecting pieces of my son's life like it was some puzzle to be solved. And the police, I asked quietly. When do we bring them in? Daniel hesitated, then opened another file. I have a contact in the department, he said. Sergeant Lopez. She takes domestic violence and elder abuse seriously. I'm going to call her off the record and tell her we suspect unlawful imprisonment and financial abuse. I'll send her whatever we get, pictures, recordings. If she believes we have probable cause, she can arrange a welfare check with officers who won't just shrug and walk away when Lauren starts crying. The idea of police in Mark's house, in front of Illy, made my stomach twist. I pictured my grandson's face, confused and scared as strangers in uniforms walked past his Christmas tree. As if reading my mind, Daniel said gently, I know this is hard, but right now, Eli's living above a dungeon. You told me he's already hearing his father cry through the floor. He might not see the police as the thing that breaks his family. He might see them as the thing that finally opens the door. I thought of Eli's whisper. Sometimes I hear him crying downstairs. And then his question, Grandpa, did you ever get locked in a room when you were bad? I closed my eyes briefly. Better a painful truth than a lifetime in chains, I said. I'm not losing my boy because I was too polite to upset his in-laws. Daniel gave a small nod of respect. All right then, we move. The next couple of hours were spent rehearsing. It felt strange, practicing sentences like lines in a play, but Daniel insisted. They're going to try to flip it on you, he said. Call you confused, say you misunderstood. So you keep asking the same simple questions. If he's so dangerous, why isn't he in a hospital? If he's getting such good treatment, why is he resting at home instead of with professionals? Let them fill the silence. People like them hate silence. Tyler helped me put on my jacket, sewing the button camera on with quick, precise moves, whispering instructions on how to tap the inside pocket twice to start the recorder. You're sure this is legal? I asked Daniel when Tyler stepped out to grab coffee. In our state, yes, he said. You're a party to the conversation, so you can record it without informing them. We're not planting bugs in their house. You're documenting your own interactions. Big difference. We went over worst-case scenarios. Lauren noticing the camera. Gary getting physical. Them calling the police before we were ready. If they accuse you of anything, you stay calm, Daniel said. You leave. We don't want this to escalate without officers we trust present. Remember, you have one big advantage. What's that? I asked. They think you're old, naive, and powerless, he said with a thin smile. Let them keep thinking that, right up until the moment Sergeant Lopez walks into their foyer. Despite everything, that almost made me laugh. On the way home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a second, my heart jumped to my throat. Lauren. The police, I answered. Dad. It It was Mark. His voice was a raspy whisper. "It's me." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "How are you calling?" "That phone you dropped," he said. "I got a bar of signal when they opened the door to bring food. I don't know how long it'll last."
How are you?
I asked. It was a stupid question, but it was all I could manage. "I've been better," he rasped. I could hear him shifting, the faint jingle of metal. "They're talking about sending me away. After Christmas, to some long-term facility. Gary thinks it'll be cleaner that way. Easier to get everything in order." Cold flooded my veins. "What kind of facility?" Did they say where?" "No," he said. "Just that it's out of state and more secure." "Dad, please hurry." The line crackled. Then, before I could say anything else, it went dead. A moment later, a text popped up from the burner number. "They're talking about sending me away to a long-term facility after Christmas. Please hurry." I pulled over to the side of the road and sat there, the engine idling, breathing hard through my nose. The plan we'd made felt suddenly fragile, like a paper bridge over a canyon. We didn't just need evidence. We needed it fast. I stared at the message until the words blurred, then wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and put the car in gear. They thought they had all the time in the world to tighten their grip, to move him somewhere I couldn't reach, dose him with enough pills that his protests would sound like nonsense. They were wrong. The trap was set. Now I just had to walk back into that house and let them talk themselves into it. Walking back up to that house felt like walking into a lion's den with a stake tied around my neck. It was a quiet weekday afternoon, no extra cars lining the street this time, no music or laughter spilling out. The Christmas lights were still up but turned off, icicles of dead plastic hanging from the roof. The party was over. The real show was still going on underground. I parked a little farther down than before. Tyler was already there, sitting in his dented sedan with a ball cap pulled low, headphones in. From where I stood on the sidewalk, he could have been any kid killing time on his phone. In reality, he had my jacket's live feed playing through one earbud, audio levels bouncing on his screen. He gave me a small thumbs up. I touched the inside of my jacket twice, the way he'd shown me. The tiny recorder hummed to life, invisible to anyone but us. As I walked up the front path, I forced my shoulders to sag, let a bit of shuffle into my step. Just an old man with a Tupperware of cookies and too much time on his hands. Lauren answered on the second ring. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. No party makeup this time. She looked tired, but when she saw me, her eyes snapped into focus, guarded. "Is everything all right?" she asked. No hello, no smile. I held up the container. "Baked these this morning," I said. Thought Eli might like some. And I wanted to check how Mark is doing after his rough night. For a second, her mask slipped, and I saw a flash of irritation, maybe even fear. Then she stepped aside stiffly. "You didn't need to come all the way over for that," she said. "We're managing." Inside, the house felt strangely hollow without the buzz of guests. The dining table was bare, the counters spotless. It was like the party had never happened. I shuffled toward the kitchen, setting the cookies down. "You mentioned yesterday," I said casually, "that Mark was at a facility. Some place for observation." She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, like I told you, we arranged for him to get some professional help. It's for the best." "What's it called again?" I squinted, as if forgetting. I should write it down. Maybe I'll send him something. He always liked crossword books. Her jaw twitched. "It's very private," she said. "They don't take calls from anyone but the immediate care team." "Oh," I said, letting my brow furrow. "So he's not here now." There was that flicker again, a tiny misstep. "He should be back soon anyway," she said. They thought it would be better for him to recuperate at home. Familiar environment. I let the words hang in the air. "So he's here?" I asked, lifting my head. "Downstairs again." Her patience snapped. "He's where he needs to be," she said sharply, "for everyone's safety." In Tyler's car, I imagined his eyes widening at that line. I nodded slowly. "You know," I said, my voice gentle, "you don't have to lock him up like an animal just because he gets upset." She exhaled hard, blowing a strand of hair from her face. "You have no idea what he's like when he gets like this," she said. "Last time he tried to leave, he threw things. He scared Eli. The chain is just until he calms down. It's for his own good, and for ours. There it was, clear as day. The word chain, hanging in the air between us like something toxic. I fought the urge to react. If he's down there, I said, softening my tone, let me bring him a cookie. Maybe he'll talk to me. You know how he used to be with me when he was a kid, always telling me things. Might do him good. She stared at me, thinking it over. She'd just admitted more than she meant to. But I was still just old Jim, dense and sentimental. In her mind, I posed no real threat. Fine, she said finally. But don't upset him. He needs calm. We walked together toward the basement door. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure Tyler could hear it through the mic. I touched the banister like a blind man as we descended, counting the steps to keep my nerves from showing. The basement smelled of damp concrete and something sour. The light clicked on, and there was Mark exactly where I'd left him, only somehow worse. His skin had a grayish tinge, eyes sunken. The chain around his wrist held him just far enough from the wall to lie down, but not to reach anything useful. "Hey, son," I said cheerfully, louder than normal, aware of Lauren behind me and the camera on my chest. "I brought you some of those oatmeal cookies you like. Remember when your mom burned half the batch and we ate them anyway?" I moved slightly so my body blocked Lauren's view of my hands. As I knelt, I set the cookie container down near his feet and, in the same motion, slipped the cheap little phone from my pocket and into the folds of the blanket beneath him. "Record everything," I breathed, barely moving my lips. His fingers brushed mine for a split second. A spark of awareness flickered in his eyes. Lauren hovered at the foot of the stairs, arms crossed. "Don't keep him talking too long," she said. "It tires him out." The Mark turned his head toward her, something raw in his gaze. "You told me you were getting help," he said hoarsely. "Not locking me up like a dog." Her mouth tightened. "You know what happens when you get worked up," she replied automatically. "You scare Illy. This is for your own good, Mark." Every word dropped into the silence like a stone. I could almost feel the recorder humming, drinking it in. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. "Well," I said lightly, "doesn't look so dangerous to me. But what do I know? I'm just the confused old man, right?" Lauren's eyes flicked to my face, then down, just briefly, to my chest. For a heartbeat, my blood ran cold. Did she see the extra button? Did she notice the way my hand brushed my jacket a little too often? She forced a tight smile. "We appreciate your concern," she said. "Really. But this is our responsibility." I lifted the chain slightly with one finger, just enough that the metal rattled against the bolt in the floor. "You can put a ribbon on a chain, Lauren," I said quietly, just loud enough for the mic. "But it's still a chain." "Jim," she snapped, color rising in her cheeks. "We're not having this conversation again. You're upsetting him." I let the chain drop. "Come on," she said briskly. "He needs rest. You've seen he's safe. Time to go upstairs." She ushered me back toward the steps, her hand a little too firm on my arm. Halfway up, I risked one last look back at Mark. His lips formed words without sound. "Don't let them take Eli." "I won't," I mouthed back. At the top, Lauren all but hustled me into the kitchen. Her eyes were sharp now, calculating. "Next time," she said, "call first. We have a lot on our plates." I gave her a mild nod, "Of course," I said. Didn't mean to barge in. Her gaze drifted for just a moment to my jacket again. I held my breath. Then she stepped back, hand on the door. "Take care, Jim," she said. It didn't sound like a wish. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. My legs felt like jelly as I walked down the path, every step measured. I didn't let myself look back until I was in Tyler's car with the door shut. "Did we get it?" I asked, voice rough. He was already fiddling with his laptop, plugging in the tiny devices. The car filled with a faint hiss. Then Lauren's voice came through the speakers, tinny but unmistakable. "The chain is just until he calms down. It's for his own good and for ours." We sat there, listening to the whole thing. Her slips, her contradictions, the clank of metal as I lifted the chain, Mark's hoarse accusation, her answer. By the time the recording ended, Tyler's hands were trembling on the keyboard. "Holy," he caught himself. "Sorry. This is insane. It's real," I said. "That's what it is." We backed up the files 3 different ways, just like Daniel had drilled into us. Then I hit call. He picked up after one ring. Tell me you have something, he said. We have her saying the chain is just until he calms down, I replied. We've got him on the floor, bruises, the bolt in the concrete. Him saying she locked him up like a dog. Her answering that it's for his own good. Daniel exhaled, the sound loud even over the phone. Send everything, he said. Now, this is enough to warrant a welfare check with probable cause. I'm calling Lopez. We forwarded the files. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a new message. Lopez has seen it. She's furious. We meet at the corner by Mark's house 9 a.m. tomorrow. 2 units. Unannounced welfare check. CPS on standby re-Eli. I stared at the words until they blurred. Tomorrow. Not weeks from now. Tomorrow. That night, I didn't even pretend to try to sleep. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house creak. Every little noise made me think of the basement. The drip, the hum, the rattle of that chain. What if Lauren had noticed the camera after all and decided to move him in the middle of the night? What if Gary, drunk and mean, decided chains weren't enough anymore? What if Ely woke up to strangers taking his father away before we could get there? Around 3 in the morning, I got up and made coffee I didn't need. I sat at the table with the mug between my hands and whispered into the empty kitchen. Hold on, son. Just one more night. At 9 o'clock, we'd be back at that house. Only this time, I wouldn't be walking up the path alone. We met around the corner from Mark's house, where the street bent just enough to hide us from view. The air was brittle with cold. Every breath came out in a white cloud. Daniel stood beside me in his dark coat, a folder under his arm. Tyler waited a little farther back, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes wide. 2 patrol cars pulled up quietly, lights off. A woman in uniform stepped out of the first one, dark hair pulled back, expression calm but alert. Sergeant Lopez. She shook Daniel's hand, then turned to me. Mr. Harris, she said. I've seen the videos and heard the recordings. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for listening, I replied. My voice sounded older than usual, even to me. She nodded once. Here's how this works. Officially, this is a welfare check. We'll knock, identify ourselves, and ask to see Mark and your grandson. If they cooperate, we keep it calm. If they refuse or if we see anything that backs up what you told us, we have authority to insist. No one makes any sudden moves. Understood. I swallowed and nodded. We walked together toward the house, the 4 of us and her partner, a tall officer named Reed. It felt strange not being alone on that path. Last time I'd carried just cookies and fear. This time the law walked beside me. Lauren opened the door almost as soon as Lopez knocked. Maybe she'd been watching the window. Maybe she'd just been on edge since my last visit. Either way, when she saw 2 uniforms on the step, her face drained of color before she forced a smile. Good morning, she said brightly. Is everything okay? Is there some misunderstanding? Lopez held up her badge. Good morning, ma'am. I'm Sergeant Lopez. We're here to conduct a welfare check on Mark Harris and your son Eli. This is at the request of concerned family and supported by evidence we've reviewed. Lauren's eyes flicked past her, landing on me and Daniel. If looks could kill, I'd have dropped right there on her porch. I don't understand, she said. Who made a complaint? What evidence? Mark is in a treatment facility, like I told his father. He's getting the help he needs. Lopez didn't blink. We have audio and video of Mr. Harris restrained in this home within the last 24 hours, she said evenly. We need to see him now, ma'am. A sound behind Lauren made us all look up. Gary appeared in the hallway, face flushed, shirt sleeves rolled up. What's going on? He demanded. Officers, you can't just barge into our home. We're managing a difficult medical situation here. Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but edged. Unlawful imprisonment isn't managing a medical situation, Mr. Collins, he said. Neither is chaining your son-in-law to a bolt in the basement. Gary's eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? I'm their attorney, Daniel replied, nodding toward me and, by extension, Mark. And these officers are here because we provided recordings of your daughter admitting to restraining Mark with a chain for everyone's safety. Lauren's composure cracked. You recorded me. She snapped at me. You sneaky old.
Mom.
Lopez cut in sharply. This isn't the time. You can cooperate voluntarily or we can proceed under authority of probable cause. Either way, we're going to see your husband. Gary puffed himself up. "You can't." "Enough," Lopez said. She glanced at Reed. "We're going in." She stepped past Lauren, not roughly, but without yielding. Reed followed. Daniel and I came behind them. Lauren stood frozen for a second, then hurried along, words tumbling out. "You're making a mistake," she insisted. Mark begged us to help him. He asked to be restrained when he felt an episode coming on. "You don't know what he's like. We've been protecting Eli from him." Lopez didn't answer. She walked straight to the basement door like she'd been there before. I realized then Daniel must have described the layout. She tried the knob. It opened. The smell hit us on the first step down: sweat, fear, that sour tang of unwashed air. The light flicked on, harsh and unforgiving. Mark was curled on his side near the wall, eyes squeezed shut against the brightness. The chain still held his wrist, the metal biting into the raw, swollen skin. He flinched at the noise, then blinked up at us. When he saw the uniforms, then me behind them, something in his face crumbled. "Dad," he whispered. I moved past Lopez, unable to help myself. "I'm here," I said. My voice broke. "I'm here, son." Lopez's professional mask shifted just a fraction when she took in the scene. "Jesus," Reed muttered under his breath. "Get those chains off him now," Lopez said, turning to Gary, who had finally followed us down, sputtering. I don't have the key on me," he stammered. "It's upstairs. This is not what it looks like. He asked for this, for his safety." Mark's eyes blazed, weak but fierce. "No," he said, voice shaking. "I did not. They locked me here whenever I argued about money or a lie. I begged them to stop." Lauren rushed down a few steps, breathless. "He's lying," she said, eyes wild. "You see, he's delusional. We only did what his doctor recommended. He throws things. He's dangerous." Lopez stared at her. "Ma'am, chains are not a standard treatment plan for anxiety," she said flatly. "And no licensed physician in this state would recommend this. You need to step back." Reed headed back up the stairs. We heard the front door open, then the car trunk. A minute later, he returned with bolt cutters. While he worked at the padlock, Daniel pulled his phone out. "We also have you on recording, Miss Collins," he said, scrolling, saying, and I quote, "The chain is just until he calms down. It's for his own good and for ours." He hit play. Lauren's own voice filled the basement, reverberating off the concrete. Her face went sheet white. I was taken out of context," she stammered. With a final snap, the lock gave way. Reed pried the cuff open, and the chain clattered to the floor. Mark winced as he brought his wrist to his chest, rubbing the angry flesh. He looked at me, tears streaking clean lines down his dirty cheeks. "They said nobody would believe me," he whispered. "That you'd all think I'm crazy. I should have come sooner," I said, my chest tight. I gripped his shoulder gently. "But I'm here now, and I believe you. We all do." Upstairs, another set of footsteps echoed. A paramedic, summoned by Lopez's call on the way over, appeared in the doorway with a medical bag. "Let's get you checked out, sir," she said to Mark. As they eased him to his feet, Lopez turned to Gary and Lauren. "At this time," she said, voice cool, "you're both being detained for questioning regarding unlawful restraint, assault, and possible abuse. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Carol, who had hovered near the top of the stairs, wringing her hands, gasped. "This is absurd," she cried. Lauren, "Say something! We told you counseling, not chains!" "We never agreed to this." Lauren rounded on her. "You told me to keep him in line!" she shouted. "You said we can't afford a scandal. Not after all the money you put into this house." Gary barked. "Don't drag us into your choices, young lady. I only did what the doctor." "What doctor?" Lopez snapped. "Give me a name. Right now," he faltered. "Well, I mean, we read some things online." Their neat little front started crumbling, pieces falling away with every word. It would have been almost satisfying if I hadn't been so bone-tired and sick at heart. Upstairs, another uniform arrived, this one from Child Protective Services. A woman with kind eyes but a firm set to her mouth. "Where's Ali?" I asked, heart thudding. "In his room with an officer," she said. "He's shaken, but okay. We'll have to place him temporarily while this is investigated. But given what I've seen so far, Mr. Harris, if you're willing and your home checks out, A kinship placement with you is our first choice. Eli appeared in the hallway then, small and pale, clinging to a stuffed animal. When he saw me, he broke free from the officer and ran, barreling into my legs. He sobbed. "What's happening? Why are there police? They're taking Mom and Grandpa Gary." I knelt slowly, my old knees protesting. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him as tight as I dared. "I know it's scary," I said into his hair, "but listen to me. You're not alone. No matter what happens, you're not alone. I've got you." Downstairs, Lauren shrieked as Reed guided her toward the stairs, cuffs clicking around her wrists. "We were protecting the family," she screamed. "He's the crazy one. You don't understand what he's like." Neighbors were already peeking from windows, a curtain twitching here, a front door opening there. For the first time, the shiny facade Lauren and her parents had built around themselves was cracking in front of an audience. Daniel quietly directed one of the officers to a file cabinet in the study, then to the family computer. "Incident logs, drafts of legal documents," he said. "Our client's son can identify them later. For now, please secure everything. It's relevant." They took photos of the basement, the bolt in the floor, the chain and cuff on the ground. An officer measured the length, noted the bruises. It all felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life on a TV screen. When the paramedics led Mark up, wrapped in a blanket, he squinted in the daylight, then reached blindly for me. I took his hand. "They're taking me to the hospital," he murmured. "I'm a little lightheaded." "That's okay," I said. "Let them fuss over you for a change. I'm riding with you, if they'll let me." The paramedic nodded. He could use a familiar face. As they guided him toward the ambulance, he looked back at the house one more time. At the porch where Lauren had once kissed him goodbye, at the windows that had hidden his prison. "I love this place," he said quietly. "I thought it was home." I squeezed his fingers. "Home isn't wood and stone," I said. "It's people who don't put chains on you." The doors closed, and I climbed in beside him, sitting on the little bench, gripping the edge as the siren wailed to life. I took his hand again, his fingers still cold. "They won't touch you again without someone watching," I promised. "Not the way they have been. That's over." As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of the house in the side mirror. Lauren and Gary being guided into separate cars, heads ducked, hands behind their backs. Carol standing on the lawn, arms wrapped around herself, surrounded by neighbors' stares. Their masks were off. The damage they'd done was plain for everyone to see now. It didn't feel like victory, exactly. There was too much wreckage for that. But as the ambulance carried us toward the hospital, Mark's grip tightened around my fingers, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel something close to relief. In the months that followed, everything that had been happening in the shadows was dragged out into the light. Lauren and her parents were charged. Unlawful imprisonment, assault, a couple of counts tied to falsifying information in those so-called incident logs. The district attorney liked the word fraud, but in the end, some of the nastier charges got rolled into a plea deal. That's how it usually goes. You learn the hard way that the system doesn't give you a movie ending. It gives you something imperfect, but better than nothing. Lauren agreed to plead guilty to unlawful restraint and one count of assault. Part of her deal was mandatory counseling and a restraining order keeping her away from Mark, unless a family court-approved supervised contact. Gary got hit with aiding and abetting, plus a slap on the wrist for trying to pass himself off as following. Medical advice, he made up. Probation fines, and an agreement to stay out of any decisions about Ellie ever again. Carol wriggled the most, pretending she was just a worried grandmother. But even she couldn't talk away the fact that her name was all over those incident logs. In the end, the court saw through their mental illness narrative. Between the recordings, the photos of that chain, and Mark sitting there on the stand, voice shaking but steady, talking about how they chipped away at his sense of reality. The judge didn't have much patience for their act. I remember sitting in that courtroom, watching my son testify. He looked different, still thinner than he used to be, still carrying shadows under his eyes, but there was a strength in the way he held himself that I hadn't seen in years. "They told me I was dangerous," he said. "That I scared my own child. They told everyone I was unstable. But the only time I ever raised my voice was when I tried to hold on to my house and my son. And that's when they locked me up. Across the aisle, Lauren stared straight ahead, lips pressed into a line. She didn't look at him once. With Daniel's help, Mark also went after the house. It took a separate set of hearings, piles of paperwork, and more patience than I would have had, but slowly the knots untangled. It turned out a lot of the agreements Gary had pushed on him, the ones tied to the title and the family trust, had been signed when Mark was under heavy medication, or literally just after one of his episodes in the basement. The judge didn't like that. In the end, the court didn't magically hand him the entire house, clean and clear. Life isn't that generous. But they did something almost as important. They removed Lauren's parents from the title and rewrote the agreements so any claim they had, tied to their investment, was severed because of their abusive behavior. Some of the money they'd sunk into the property was officially reclassified as a permanent gift. A bit of poetic justice they didn't appreciate. Lauren's share of the house became part of the divorce proceedings. After everything, Mark decided he didn't want to live there anymore anyway. He sold his interest. What he got wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for a small, decent place in a quieter neighborhood. The court also ordered restitution to cover his medical bills, therapy, and some of the wages he'd lost when they'd told his job he was too unstable to work. The hardest part was sorting out Eli's future. Family court is its own kind of battlefield, quieter but just as brutal. Daniel warned us, they're gonna swing for full custody. Abusers don't give up control easily. But this time, we had more than stories. We had video of the basement. We had those logs painting Mark as a monster right next to recordings of Lauren admitting the chains were for everyone's safety. We had a therapist, Mark's real therapist now, willing to testify that Mark was not psychotic, not violent, just deeply traumatized by prolonged coercive control. The judge listened to all of it. To Lauren's lawyer talking about her concern for her child. To Mark's quiet description of hearing Eli's footsteps overhead while he lay chained to the floor. To the CPS worker who'd visited my little place and called it modest but stable, and noted the way Eli had relaxed there, how he chattered about fishing and tinkering with tools. In the end, the court said Eli's best interests lay with his father. It wasn't instant. For a while, Eli split his time between my house and the temporary apartment Daniel helped Mark find after he got out of the hospital. Lauren was allowed supervised visits in a neutral center once a week, with a counselor present. She didn't always show up. When she did, Eli came back quiet and withdrawn for a day or two. He never talked much about what she said in those rooms. I didn't push. When Mark was stronger, eating regular meals, going to therapy twice a week, working part-time from home, the judge granted him primary custody. I got it in writing that, as long as my health held, I would always have a right to see my grandson. I framed that paper. It sits on my wall where my old mechanic's certificates used to hang. Healing didn't come all at once. Some wounds don't close neatly. There was a day, a few months after everything, when Mark asked me to go with him back to the old house. It was vacant then, up for sale. With the agent's permission, we walked through one last time. The basement felt smaller without the chain. The bolt holes were still there, filled with some kind of patching compound, but visible if you knew where to look. Dust motes swam in the light from that narrow window. We stood there side by side, silence stretching between us. Some nights I wake up thinking I'm still down here, he said finally. His voice echoed faintly. I feel the cold on my skin, hear the party upstairs. Then I hear Eli snoring in the next room and remember I'm free. I put a hand on his shoulder. Freedom takes some getting used to, I said. So does believing you deserve it. He nodded slowly. I kept waiting for someone to notice, he said. For a neighbor to ask why they didn't see me anymore. For a doctor to see through the act. For I don't know. Somebody. He looked at me. I guess in the end, you were the only one who really saw me, Dad. The compliment hurt and warmed in equal measure. I should have seen sooner, I said. Being someone's father doesn't end when they turn 18, or 30, or when they get married. I forgot that for a while. He shook his head. They made sure you couldn't see, he said. They built that wall on purpose. But you still broke through it. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Eli started spending weekends at my place, then some weeknights when Mark had therapy. We'd fish at the little pond on the edge of town, the same one I used to take his dad to. Back then I'd do most of the work while Mark tangled his line. Now it was my hands that fumbled and Eli's that fixed. "Twist it like this, Grandpa," he'd say patiently, showing me how to thread the line through the eye of the hook. Dad taught me. On rainy days, we'd sit at my kitchen table and work on that model truck I'd bought him the Christmas everything went wrong. It had survived, still in its crumpled gift bag, in a corner of his closet at the other house. Lauren hadn't bothered to throw it away. "Why did Mom?" He always started to say, "Mom," then seemed to correct himself. "Why did Lauren do that to Dad?" He asked me one afternoon, carefully sliding a tiny plastic wheel onto an axle. I took a breath. "That's a hard question," I said. "Sometimes people care more about control and money than they do about kindness, even family. Especially family, if they think they're entitled to what you have." He frowned. "But she had nice stuff already." "Nice stuff can make some folks hungrier, not happier," I said. "They start thinking they deserve everything, and anyone in their way is a problem to fix." He mulled that over. "I don't ever want to be like that," he said quietly. I squeezed his shoulder. "You won't?" I said. "You've seen what it does. That's a good teacher." We didn't talk much about the trial around him. Kids hear more than you think, though. One night, as we sat on the couch watching some superhero movie, he said, out of nowhere, "Grandpa, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you and Dad." My throat tightened. "Brave," I said. "We were scared the whole time, you know." He shrugged, leaning against me. "You were scared," he said, "but you still did stuff." I thought about that a lot after he went to bed, about how people like Lauren and her parents had looked at me and seen someone irrelevant, senile even, an obstacle to be managed, not a person to be reckoned with. They thought I was easy to manipulate. They forgot I've spent a lifetime watching people show who they really are. You learn a lot in garages and waiting rooms and cheap diners if you keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. Age doesn't make you useless. It gives you patience, and, if you let it, a longer memory for patterns of cruelty. If there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's that greed and the hunger for control can turn family into jailers. Respect for elders isn't just about holding doors and saying, "Sir." It's about listening when the old man in the corner says, "Something's not right here," even if he can't prove it yet, and those mental health labels people throw around so easily. Crazy, unstable, paranoid. Always look at who benefits when someone gets called that. Who gets the house? Who gets the kids? Who gets the power? In the end, it wasn't Mark's blood-in-laws who saved him. It was a widowed old mechanic, a retired nurse down the street, a young lawyer, and a tech-savvy kid who used to build Lego towers in my living room. Chosen loyalty, not shared last names. Our first Christmas after everything was quiet. No long table, no expensive wine, no perfectly staged photos. Just my little house. We put a small tree in the corner by the window. The lights were the same cheap kind I used to string when Mark was a boy. They still tangled, and I still swore under my breath trying to fix them. Ely laughed and untied knots with nimble fingers. Mark sat on the couch, his wrist bare except for a faint ring of scar tissue. Ely fell asleep later surrounded by torn wrapping paper, a half-built truck at his feet, the TV murmuring some old holiday movie in the background. I sat nearby, the room lit by the tree and the soft rise and fall of their breathing. There was no music from a stereo, just the hum of the heater and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. It was enough. More than enough. I looked up at the ceiling, where Eli had hung paper chains he'd made from colored construction paper at school. Red, green, white, looped from corner to corner. The only chains in this house, I remember thinking, are the ones that come down at the end of the night and go in the trash. If this story hits you somewhere tender, if it makes you angry or sad, or maybe just wary, I'd ask you to think about your own life for a moment. Would you press charges against your own in-laws, or even your own child, if they were abusing someone you love? Or would you keep it in the family and hope it got better on its own? Have you ever had a relative or an in-law try to control your home, your money, or your reputation the way Lauren and her parents tried with Mark? Did you see it coming? How did you handle it? I'm just one old man with one story. But I know I'm not the only one who's watched greed tear at the seams of a family. If you've walked through something like this, or you're worried you might be in the middle of it right now, you're not alone. Talk to someone you trust, a neighbor, a lawyer, a friend. Don't let anyone chain you up, physically or otherwise, and call it love. If anything in what I've told you tonight sounds familiar, let us know in the comments. Tell us where you're listening from, and if you've ever seen this kind of thing happen in your own family. And if you think someone you care about needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself or the people you love, share this story with them. Like I learned the hard way, the dark only wins when everyone looks away.